For 30 years, there was a comforting ritual across America that defined the end of our day. As the clock struck 11:30, the familiar trumpet blasts would sound, the colorful curtain would part, and Johnny Carson would step out to tuck the nation in for the night. To millions of us, he was more than just a host. He was the reliable friend who sat in our living rooms through decades of changing history, offering a steady hand and a quick wit. Yet, despite inviting over 22,000 guests onto his stage to entertain us, the man behind the desk remained an enigma. He was the undisputed king of late night, but he was also Hollywood's most solitary figure, a man who built a fortress of professionalism around his true self to keep the world at a distance. While thousands of celebrities came to sell a movie or polish their public image, Johnny saw right through the glitz. He possessed a finely tuned radar for authenticity and a notoriously low tolerance for phoniness. Privately, he maintained a very different kind of list. This wasn't a roster of the biggest box office draws or the loudest personalities. Instead, it was a short list of the rare few who managed to crack his armor, the special souls who made him forget the cameras were rolling and simply enjoy the moment. These were the guests who didn't just perform for the audience, they connected with the lonely man behind the laughter. They brought out a warmth and vulnerability in Johnny that the rest of the world rarely saw. As we pull back the velvet curtain today, we aren't just looking at clips from old television shows. We are stepping back into a golden era to discover the 9 people who truly touched Johnny Carson's heart. You might be surprised to see who made the cut, and more importantly, why they meant so much to him. 1. Jimmy Stewart, the man who made the king cry. To begin our journey through this exclusive list, we must start with the man who sat at the very top of Johnny Carson's personal pantheon. If there was ever a figure who embodied the very soul of what America wanted to believe about itself, decent, humble, and fundamentally good, it was Jimmy Stewart. When Jimmy walked through those curtains, the dynamic of the show shifted entirely. Johnny Carson, usually the sharp-witted master of ceremonies who kept the world at arm's length, would visibly soften. He transformed from the unflappable host into a genuine admirer in the presence of true character. Johnny's deep affection for Jimmy stemmed from a rare quality that was disappearing from Hollywood even then: authenticity. In an industry crowded with slick performers and rehearsed anecdotes, Jimmy was refreshingly human. He never tried to be polished. Johnny absolutely loved that Jimmy would stumble over his words, pause to search for the right expression, or let that famous, hesitant drawl fill the silence. He wasn't performing a version of himself for the cameras, he was simply being Jimmy. For Carson, who spent his life analyzing human behavior, this lack of pretense was the ultimate luxury. The depth of their connection was immortalized in a broadcast from 1981 that remains one of the most touching moments in television history. It was the night Jimmy pulled a piece of paper from his pocket to read a poem named Bo, written about his late golden retriever.
I'll always love a dog named Bo.
As Jimmy's voice cracked while describing the empty space in the room and the silence where a tail used to wag, the studio audience fell into a reverent hush. But it was Johnny's reaction that told the real story. The man famous for his emotional restraint, who could usually deflect any heavy moment with a quick joke, simply let his guard down. He began to weep openly. He didn't try to hide his tears or cut the tension with humor, he just sat there, sharing a raw, human moment of grief with his friend. This respect extended far beyond what we saw on screen. Behind the scenes, the Tonight Show staff knew that a Jimmy Stewart booking meant the boss would be in his most generous mood. Johnny would frequently break his own cardinal rules for Jimmy, instructing producers to ignore the strict timing of the show. He would ask them to extend the segments or push back commercial breaks, just to give Jimmy more time to speak. In the high-pressure world of live-to-tape television, that kind of freedom was practically unheard of. It was Johnny's way of saying that some things and some people were simply more important than the schedule. If Jimmy Stewart was the guest who touched Johnny's heart, the next man on his list was the one who could effortlessly dance with his comedic mind. Do you remember watching that night when Jimmy read about Bo? If that moment brought a tear to your eye back then, or even just thinking about it now, please hit the like button on this video so we can honor the memory of a true Hollywood gentleman together. 2. Bob Newhart, a kindred spirit. While Jimmy Stewart represented the dignified, emotional heart of Carson's ideal guest, Bob Newhart connected with Johnny on an entirely different level. He was the perfect dance partner for Johnny's comedic mind. If Stewart touched Carson's soul, Newhart tickled his intellect. Their relationship on stage was less like an interview and more like watching two master jazz musicians improvising a duet. They shared a rhythm that couldn't be taught, a dry, deadpan wit that found humor not in loud punchlines, but in the absurdity of life's mundane moments. Johnny once famously called Bob the most effortlessly funny man he knew, and coming from the king of late night, there was no higher compliment. What made their chemistry so electric was the silence. Unlike the frantic energy of many comedians who felt the need to fill every second with noise, Newhart was comfortable with the pause. He would start a story, stammer slightly in that trademark style, and Johnny would wait, knowing exactly when to drop in a reaction. They anticipated each other's moves perfectly, creating a conversational flow that made millions of viewers feel like they were eavesdropping on two old friends. The depth of Carson's admiration was most visible in how he broke the strict rules of television for Bob. Johnny was notoriously disciplined about time. He ran a tight ship where segments were timed down to the second. Yet, when Newhart was on a roll, the staff in the control room would often see Johnny make a subtle hand signal, the stretch it sign. It was a command to delay the commercial break to let the segment run long. With most guests, Johnny was counting down the seconds until he could move on. With Bob, he genuinely never wanted the conversation to end. But what truly cemented Newhart's place in Johnny's inner circle wasn't just his talent, it was his humility. Johnny Carson had a famously low tolerance for prima donnas, stars who treated the crew with indifference or disdain. Bob was the complete opposite. He arrived without an entourage and without demands. He remembered the names of the camera operators he had met years earlier. He chatted with the pages and thanked the makeup artists. Johnny, who saw everything from his desk, noticed these quiet acts of kindness. He respected that Bob was a gentleman first and a star second. This professional respect eventually blossomed into a rare private friendship. Johnny was famously protective of his personal time, keeping a firm wall between his work and his life. Yet Bob Newhart was one of the very few people invited into that private world to play golf. For those who knew Carson well, this was the ultimate seal of approval. If Johnny Carson invited you to spend 4 hours on a golf course with him, it meant he didn't just value you as a guest, he actually liked you as a human being. The quiet intellectual camaraderie of Bob Newhart was a soothing balm for Johnny, but sometimes the host needed a different kind of energy to feel alive. He needed someone who would bring a little danger, a little unpredictability, and perhaps a water pistol hidden in a jacket. 3. Burt Reynolds, the perfect accomplice. While the quiet sophistication of Bob Newhart was a sanctuary for Johnny, sometimes the host just wanted to cut loose. He needed someone who could match his energy, challenge his dominance, and turn the Tonight Show desk into a playground. Enter Burt Reynolds, the man who brought a sense of danger and unpredictable fun that Johnny absolutely craved. When Burt walked out to that famous theme music, you knew the script was going out the window. This wasn't a standard celebrity interview, it was a friendly wrestling match between two alpha males who genuinely enjoyed trying to one-up each other. Most stars in the 1970s arrived with a list of talking points from their publicists, terrified of saying the wrong thing. Burt Reynolds was different. He understood a fundamental truth about television that others missed. The audience wanted to see a relationship, not a sales pitch. He came to play, not just to plug a movie. Whether he was hiding water pistols in his jacket or tearing up his own cue cards, Burt treated the show as a playful partnership. He was the mischievous younger brother Johnny never had, always testing boundaries to see how far he could push the king of late night. The most legendary example of this dynamic was the infamous shaving cream incident. It remains one of the most replayed moments in television history for a reason. When Burt ambushed Johnny, hitting him squarely in the face with a handful of shaving cream during what was supposed to be a serious segment, the audience gasped. But look closely at Johnny's reaction. He didn't call security. He didn't get angry. He roared with laughter. In that moment, wiped clean of his composure and covered in foam, Johnny was happier than he had been all week. He loved genuine surprise. Real surprise, not the rehearsed shock most actors pretended to feel. Burt was one of the few people on Earth who could catch Johnny Carson off guard, and Johnny respected him enormously for it. What truly sealed their bond, however, was Burt's ability to take a punch. Johnny had a specific test for his friends. Could he tease them without them falling to pieces? Johnny would mercilessly crack jokes about Burt's high-profile romantic failures or his box office flops, and instead of getting defensive, Burt would laugh harder than anyone else. He had a thick skin and a lack of ego that was incredibly rare in Hollywood. He proved that he could dish it out and take it in equal measure, earning his place as Johnny's favorite sparring partner. From the wild physical comedy of water pistols and shaving cream, we now turn the page to a completely different side of Johnny Carson. While he loved the chaos Burt brought, there was a hidden part of Johnny that yearned for something deeper, a hunger for intellectual challenge that could only be satisfied by a true genius. 4. Orson Welles, the genius who awed the king. If Burt Reynolds appealed to the mischievous boy in Johnny Carson, Orson Welles spoke directly to the scholar hidden within the man. To the casual viewer, Johnny was the quick-witted comedian who could turn a bad joke into a great moment. But those who truly knew him understood that he possessed a deeply intellectual soul, one that was often starved for substance in the superficial world of show business. When Orson Welles was booked on the show, Johnny's demeanor shifted from professional host to fascinated student. He was genuinely in awe of Orson, not because of his celebrity, but because of his mind. This respect was best illustrated by how Johnny prepared for these appearances. For almost any other guest, Johnny could rely on his natural charm and the pre-interview notes provided by his staff. But when Orson was scheduled, Johnny would actually hit the books. He would spend his afternoons reading up on history, literature, and theater, wanting to be sharp enough to keep up with the genius sitting across from him. He didn't do this for anyone else. It revealed how much he yearned to be seen as more than just a late-night jester. He wanted to meet Orson as an intellectual equal. Their conversations were a breath of fresh air for a host tired of promotional chatter. They didn't waste time on Hollywood gossip or rehearsed funny stories. Instead, they dove into the deep end, discussing the nuances of Shakespeare, the complexities of politics, and the rich tapestry of history. In those moments, the mask of Johnny Carson TV star would slip away, revealing a curious, well-read man who was deeply engaged with the world. Orson also brought a level of honesty that Johnny found incredibly refreshing. Despite being a cinematic titan, Orson would speak openly about his failures, his canceled projects, and the times he had been fired. In a town built on carefully maintained images, Orson's willingness to discuss his defeats without any spin was something Johnny respected enormously. And then, of course, there was the magic. Both men shared a lifelong passion for the art of illusion. When Orson would perform a complex magic trick right there at the desk, the intellectual debate would vanish, replaced by pure, childlike wonder. You could see it in Johnny's eyes. He was no longer the cynical host. He was just a kid watching a wizard at work, completely caught up in the mystery of it all. Orson Welles was a mentor for Johnny's mind, challenging him to think deeper. But the next man on Johnny's list was the mentor for his career, the legendary figure who wrote the very blueprint that Johnny followed every single night. Which style of guest did you enjoy watching more back in the day? The wild, unpredictable fun of Burt Reynolds, or these deep intellectual conversations with Orson Welles? We would love to hear your preference in the comments below. 5. Jack Benny, the master and the idol. If Orson Welles challenged Johnny's intellect, Jack Benny defined his very existence as a performer. To understand Johnny Carson, you must first understand Jack Benny, for the student never forgot the master who paved the way. Johnny once admitted to a close colleague after a show, "He was the reason I do what I do." It was a simple confession that carried the weight of a lifetime's worth of admiration. Every time Johnny stared into the camera with that deadpan expression after a joke bombed, or held a silence just a second longer than comfortable to get a laugh, he was channeling the lessons he learned from watching Jack. Benny's influence was the DNA of Carson's comedy. He taught Johnny that the host didn't always need to be the one delivering the punchline to be the funniest person in the room. He showed him that a well-timed look or exasperated pause could bring the house down more effectively than any written script. When Jack appeared on the Tonight Show, viewers witnessed a remarkable transformation. Johnny, usually the confident captain of the ship, would visibly shift into the role of an appreciative apprentice. He wasn't trying to compete with Jack, he was trying to serve him. This reverence went so far that Johnny would actually change the technical direction of the show during Jack's segments. In a move that was practically unheard of for a star of his magnitude, Johnny would instruct the directors and camera operators to prioritize Jack's reaction shots over his own. He wanted the audience to see Jack's face, not his. He was literally directing the spotlight away from himself to ensure the master received the glory he deserved. It was an act of professional humility that revealed just how deeply Johnny understood and respected the hierarchy of comedy history. The magic of their interactions lay in the bridging of generations. Jack Benny was born in 1894, a pioneer of vaudeville and radio, while Johnny was the face of modern television in the 1970s. Yet, when they sat together, the age gap evaporated. Jack, even in his 80s, possessed impeccable timing that remained as sharp as a razor. Watching them banter was like watching history in real time, the man who invented the formula talking to the man who perfected it. It was a torch passing that never felt forced because Jack was still running the race right alongside him. Perhaps the most poignant evidence of this devotion was found off camera, deep inside Johnny's private office. It was a space few people ever saw, a sanctuary from the madness of Hollywood. On the wall, there were no photos of the presidents he had interviewed, no shots of movie sirens, and surprisingly, no pictures of himself. There was only one framed photograph displayed in that personal workspace, a picture of Jack Benny. That solitary image said everything. It was a daily reminder of the standard Johnny held himself to, a tribute to the man who showed him that comedy could be an art form. Johnny's respect for the pioneers of comedy was absolute, but there was one other performer, a woman who commanded not just his respect, but his complete and total trust to do absolutely anything she wanted on his stage. 6. Carol Burnett, Sunshine on the Stage. The respect Johnny held for the pioneers of comedy was absolute, but when Carol Burnett walked onto the stage, that reverence turned into something even warmer, pure, unadulterated joy. Johnny once famously confided to Ed McMahon that Carol brings sunshine to the stage, and anyone watching at home could see exactly what he meant. The transformation in Johnny was immediate and physical. The moment she appeared, his shoulders would visibly loosen, the professional tension in his jaw would relax, and that carefully guarded host persona would melt away. The invisible barrier he maintained with almost everyone else simply evaporated, replaced by the easy familiarity of two old friends catching up over a backyard fence. This comfort stemmed from a level of professional trust that was almost non-existent in the high-stakes world of late-night television. Johnny was notoriously controlling about the flow of his show, guiding guests through prearranged stories to ensure the segment landed. But with Carol, he threw away the map. She was one of the rare few he allowed to go completely off script. If she wanted to follow a crazy tangent, start an impromptu game, or even turn the tables and begin interviewing him, Johnny would just lean back and let it happen. He trusted her instincts implicitly. He knew that she understood the rhythm of television just as well as he did, that she would never embarrass him, and most importantly, that wherever she took the conversation, it was guaranteed to be entertaining. Beyond the laughter, what Johnny truly cherished about Carol was her complete lack of pretension. By the time she was a regular on his couch, she was the superstar of her own variety show, a titan of the industry. Yet she arrived at the studio with the humility of a newcomer. Much like Bob Newhart, she treated every member of the staff with genuine kindness. She remembered the names of camera operators she hadn't seen in months, asked makeup artists about their families, and actually listened to the answers. Johnny, who had eyes in the back of his head, noticed these things. He valued that decency enormously, often using Carol as the gold standard when complaining about other, more difficult celebrities. She proved that you could be at the very top of the world and still be a kind person. Carol Burnett brought the warmth and the laughter, but the next man on Johnny's list brought a different kind of grounded reality. He was a Hollywood icon who refused to act like one, representing a specific brand of American masculinity that Johnny deeply admired. 7. James Garner, the everyman movie star. While Carol Burnett brought the sunshine that lit up the stage, James Garner brought the solid earth beneath it. He represented a brand of masculinity that Johnny Carson found incredibly refreshing amidst the vanity of Hollywood. He was a movie star who didn't act like one. Johnny once famously quipped to a producer, "He is what a movie star should be, and most aren't." What he meant was that James Garner was entirely devoid of the performance that most actors maintained even when the cameras stopped rolling. With James, what you saw was exactly what you got. There was a grounded quality to Garner's storytelling that resonated deeply with the audience and with Johnny. When he sat on that couch, he didn't speak about filming blockbusters like The Great Escape or Maverick with an air of self-importance. Instead, he talked about his work the way a mechanic might talk about fixing a car, or an accountant might discuss tax season. He focused on the human moments, the practical jokes played between takes, the friendships with the crew, and the mishaps that never made it into the tabloids. He stripped away the glamour to reveal the hard work and the humor underneath, making millions of viewers feel like they were just listening to a regular guy talk about his day job. Johnny Carson had a secret character test for his guests, one that he never spoke about publicly, but watched closely. He observed how celebrities treated the staff when they thought no one important was looking. James Garner passed this test with flying colors every single time. He arrived with no entourage, he thanked the pages, and he treated the producers with the same respect he showed the network executives. Johnny valued that consistency more than box office numbers. It showed a lack of ego that allowed Johnny to lower his own defenses. In fact, their on-air chemistry was so comfortable that Johnny, typically a fortress of privacy, would occasionally slip up and reference their private conversations or shared experiences, a rare breach of the wall he usually maintained between his public and private lives. Garner also possessed a unique ability to bridge the gap between generations. He could tell stories about legends like Marlon Brando or Steve McQueen that fascinated the older viewers, yet he did it with a modern, approachable sensibility that appealed to the younger crowd. He was the cool, unpretentious link between the golden age and the modern era. James Garner represented the timeless appeal of a true gentleman in his prime, but the final entries on Johnny's list proved that talent has no expiration date. The next two legends were living proof that you could get older without ever getting old. This video brings back so many wonderful memories, doesn't it? If you are enjoying this trip down memory lane, please share this video with a friend or family member so they can relive these golden moments with you. 9. George Burns and Lucille Ball. Immortal legends. James Garner showed us how to age with grace, but the final two names on Johnny's list proved that true legends don't just survive, they conquer time itself. When George Burns walked out from behind the curtain, particularly in his later years, viewers witnessed something extraordinary. Johnny Carson, the unquestioned king of television, would treat his guest with the deference normally reserved for visiting royalty. At 80, 90, and eventually 100 years old, George Burns represented a miracle of longevity in a business that usually discards people the moment they show a wrinkle. Johnny used to marvel that George was the only person in Hollywood who actually got funnier as he got older. While most performers peak and then slowly fade, George just kept climbing. This respect completely altered how Johnny conducted the interview. Typically, Johnny was the master of the quick interjection, jumping in every 30 seconds to keep the energy high. But with George, Johnny would simply ask a question, lean back in his chair, and give the stage away. He would sometimes go 2 or 3 minutes without saying a word, letting George hold court. For a host who controlled every microsecond of his show, this silence was the ultimate tribute. He knew he was in the presence of a master who didn't need any help. Even during commercial breaks, when Johnny would usually confer with producers, he would instead turn to George, eagerly asking him questions about the vaudeville days of the 1920s. For those few minutes, Johnny wasn't a host. He was a student soaking up a private history lesson from the last man alive who had seen it all. If George Burns was the patriarch of comedy, then Lucille Ball was undeniably its queen. When Lucy appeared on The Tonight Show, it was a summit meeting between two pioneers who had revolutionized the medium. Johnny respected Lucy not just because she was funny, but because she was formidable. He often told friends that she was the smartest person in television, admiring how she had shattered glass ceilings to become the first female head of a major studio. They shared a unique bond that no one else could understand. They both knew the crushing weight of carrying a hit show on their shoulders week after week, year after year. This mutual understanding created a safety net that allowed for moments of profound vulnerability. In one of the most touching segments in the show's history, Johnny surprised Lucy with footage from her very first screen test, material she hadn't seen in decades. As she watched her younger self, the tough, business-savvy executive melted away, and she began to tear up. It was a raw, unscripted moment, and Johnny handled it with exquisite tenderness. He didn't exploit her emotion, he protected it. He treated her with the gentle affection of a brother, proving that their connection went far deeper than professional courtesy. George Burns and Lucille Ball weren't just guests to Johnny. They were family, they were teachers, and they were the living soul of the industry he loved. As we look back at these 9 incredible individuals, we realize they were more than just entertainers. They were the heartbeat of The Tonight Show. As we close the curtain on this journey through the Golden Age, we are left to wonder what exactly united this diverse group of people. What thread connects a stammering actor like Jimmy Stewart with a boisterous rebel like Burt Reynolds, or a quiet intellectual like Bob Newhart with a powerhouse like Lucille Ball? The answer lies not in their fame, but in their humanity. Johnny Carson, the man who spent 30 years watching the world from behind a desk, wasn't impressed by box office numbers or shiny awards. He was searching for something far rarer in Hollywood: authenticity. Every single person on this short list shared a common trait. They were unpretentious. They were genuine talents who didn't need to shout to be heard, and perhaps most importantly, they were kind. They treated the crew with respect, they checked their egos at the door, and they weren't afraid to be vulnerable. For a man as private and guarded as Johnny, these guests offered a safe harbor. They were the rare few who allowed him to drop the mask of the king of late night and just be a person. He didn't just want to be entertained by them, he wanted to connect with them. Looking back at these moments today, it is hard not to feel a pang of nostalgia for what we have lost. The television landscape has changed so much. We live in an era of viral clips and carefully managed public images where genuine moments are often drowned out by noise. We miss the patience of a Jack Benny silence, the raw emotion of a Jimmy Stewart poem, and the unscripted chaos of a Burt Reynolds prank. That is precisely why we keep coming back to these old clips. They remind us of a time when entertainment felt like a conversation between friends, characterized by decency, wit, and a touch of class that seems to be in short supply today. Of these 9 legends, who was your absolute favorite? Or do you think Johnny left someone off the list who deserved to be there? Please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. We would love to hear your story and read your memories. Thank you for taking this walk down memory lane with us. If you want to keep these memories alive and ensure the Golden Age is never forgotten, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We will be back soon with more wonderful stories about those beautiful days. Thank you for watching.